Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Hey, welcome to Target Market Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, the founder of Kasman Capital Group, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode of the show. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, do me a favor and take 1 minute, leave us a 5-star rating and review so other folks can find the show as well. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're interested in multifamily investing and you want to review a sample deal package, you are in luck. We have a free download available on our website at kasmancapital.com/sample deal, where you can download a sample deal package to see how deals are put together. You will also join our mailing list to get some great marketing tips for multifamily, as well as see exclusive offerings if you qualify. All you have to do is go to kasmancapital.com/sample deal. Now, today we're going to be talking to my buddy, Kent Ritter, who is an experienced real estate investor based in Indianapolis with investments over 1,000 units in multifamily. Kent, welcome to the show.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Kent, thank you for coming on. Why don't you take 30 seconds and tell us and our audience a little bit more about yourself in your own words?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I started out my career in management consulting, really focused on helping some of the largest organizations in the country, mainly health systems, $1 billion and up, focus on operational and financial improvement. And really, I think that translates really well into what we're doing now, just building systems and processes and leveraging technology to be more efficient, more effective. About 4 years into my career, decided to go and start my own firm. So we went, and about 7 of us total partners left the firm we were at, said, we really think the market's going in a different direction. So we decided to start our own management consulting firm about 2010, really standard startup story around a guy's kitchen table. Grew that, 5 years later to 30 million in revenue and 95 employees, and
Wow.
Sold that business at the end of 2015. And that was really what kicked off my real estate career, was saying, what do I want to do next? What do I do with this capital I've accumulated? And what's the best investment source? And so really went through a series of of just intense education and landed on multifamily as the best route to go. And specifically the idea of syndication, of being able to pool investors' money together along with my own and go out and buy an asset that's bigger and better than what I'd be able to buy on my own and really benefit everyone. So that's kind of my quick journey.
I love it, man. And to your point, leveraging that experience, when you talk about the management and financial consulting and going in and finding the efficiencies, that absolutely is transferable. It's a big part of what we do with value add investing. You mentioned that, once you sold that company that you launched, you were looking for avenues to, invest and figure out what to do with the proceeds, and you landed on multifamily syndication. What exactly was it about multifamily syndication that sparked your interest?
Yeah, it was, it's kind of an interesting journey. It's probably pretty standard for folks, but so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Which everybody else did. Yeah, and that led me to, wow, real estate looks really promising. So, I started going down the normal path, right? I knew some folks that had some single families. They all hated it. So, they were successful. I know a guy that has 30 single family houses and he's successful, but every time we meet up and we get a beer and he's like, oh man, I had to deal with this. I had to fix this toilet. I had to, and I said, it's not really for me. I like to be the behind the scenes guy more. So that led me to say, okay, I think multifamily, you can build enough scale to have that on-site management, have those dedicated resources. And so I went out and started looking on my own and said, okay, I'm going to go buy a property. And I started looking at properties and said, okay, maybe I could buy a 50 unit on my own. And then luckily during that process, I met some folks who really helped educate me on, okay, what if you go out and buy a 50 unit? Great. what are you going to do next? You've blown all your capital. You're stuck managing this property. 50 units isn't enough to really have that dedicated management, right? You're not to the scale you need to be at. And they said that's not the way to do it. Here's how you want to do it. And that's when I really learned about syndication. I didn't know anything about it. And, once they just spoke to me about that, I said, wow, this makes total sense. And so what I did was I went and I invested with a few sponsors in about 10 deals over the past couple of years, and really use those along with the books and the podcasts and the mentorship. I purchased and I'm a part of a couple of mentorship programs, but that hands-on experience of being that limited partner in those deals and being that really annoying limited partner that's asking the questions and asking to come on site and wanting to sit down with the management team and say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why'd you finance it this way? Right? Why are you focusing on these renovations and not these over here? And just using that real life experience, gave me the confidence, one, in just knowing what works and what doesn't, but two, the confidence to say, wow, it's not rocket science. I think I can do this myself. I think, like we said, a lot of those skills I had translate well. Yeah. And something that really made me think that I could go out and lead a group and be successful and do that work. So.
Ken, I love that. You mentioned a couple of things there that really jump out to me. First of all, the scale. You had the money to buy a 50 unit by yourself. And I think one of the things for me, I run into a lot of people who are in similar positions where they're looking to invest themselves. And there are a lot of reasons, right? You want generational wealth. You want to create passive income. And you look at multifamily as a great avenue to do that. The downside is if you're not buying at a level where you have enough scale to hire a professional property management company and hire an on-site property manager, then you really get stuck being very involved in the day-to-day operations of the business, having to make a lot of decisions with a lot of interruptions of your day. And it's not exactly what you sign up for. I know a lot of the books and podcasts and everything else make it sound really easy and sexy, but there's a lot of day-to-day things that come up that you need to be involved with if you don't have someone on site who is dedicated and being compensated for making these daily decisions and operating at that level. And because your experience is more at a macro corporate level with the management, consulting, driving efficiencies and operations, being down in the weeds on selecting a toilet to replace a toilet that's broken is probably not what you want to spend your time doing, right?
Yeah. And it's not my core competency, right? Focus on your strengths and focus on what you're good at. Like I don't have the construction background to go out and, hold the contractors accountable, or to even on a broader scale to go out and source the countertops, right, and get the best pricing. And I don't have the scale personally to have the relationships to be able to do that and have those economies, right? But working with a large property management firm who does have the scale and have the relationship and is buying thousands of toilets or, thousands of feet of countertops, you get the benefit of that scale as well. And I think going back to something that you said around the idea about having that dedicated management, I think is critical. It's just the idea of having people on site all the time, having folks that are there for maintenance all the time. They know the property. I think that's something that that can't be undervalued. And I think that the only way to get there, like you said, is through that scale. And if you're in a 50 unit, that's it's kind of a no man's land place to be, where it's the best quality property management firms, they don't want to manage something that small. So you're going to have kind of the second tier firms, and then you're going to not be able to afford full on-site resources. So you're going to be sharing your resources with maybe 2-3 other properties, So I think those are the reasons that, really in real estate, bigger is better.
It is. And I just want to underscore this point because I know there are people listening right now who are probably saying, I disagree or whatever, fighting the notion. And I promise you, Kent's telling you, I'm telling you from personal experience. I've got a lot of larger properties that we're partners in, and I have smaller properties that we're partners and leads on. And I will tell you, those smaller ones, they eat up so much more of my time because I don't have an on-site full-time property manager. So whenever there's a challenge or a situation, I have to be the one who steps in and resolves it, or at least give direction on how to resolve it. And I will tell you too, there's a way to do it the right way. And just to quickly answer, someone who really is completely focused on doing it that way, what I would say is you still want to find scale. So find a way to cluster, build, get scale that
Mhm.
way. So if you want to buy 30, 40, 50 units, that's fine, but you better buy 3 or 4 of them close together so you
That's
can
right.
still get the
Mhm.
advantages of hiring somebody full time on site. So that's one way to do it, but most people probably don't have the capital to do all that at once. So finding ways to partner, finding ways to pool resources together, that is a phenomenal way to do it. So I know some folks may be hesitant to it, but truly the economies, the efficiencies, the economies of scale that come from taking that approach, they will make your life so much easier and allow you to scale in a way that you can't do if you are buying a 50 unit by yourself. So just keep that in mind and think about it.
Mhm.
Kent, the other thing you hit on was you started to invest as a limited partner in other people's deals. Knowing that you kind of wanted to do this yourself, why did you think it was important to start as a limited partner as opposed to kind of just starting out of the gate, building your own investor database and trying to put together your own syndication?
Yeah, I guess the simple answer is, I'm humble enough to recognize you don't know what you don't know. And I recognize that there was a lot I probably didn't know. So I felt like that was partnering with some really good people that have track records and been doing this a long time. I felt like was the best way to learn, just get
Mhm,
that hands-on experience.
mhm.
And really was, I mean, it was a fantastic experience of going through that. And I would say, I would recommend it to anybody that wants to get started out. I mean, do a couple deals as a limited partner, learn how it works, learn how, and if you do it across a couple of different sponsors too, because they all have different styles. You're going to say, what feels good as an investor from a communication standpoint,
Yeah.
and what doesn't, right? Like you don't want a sponsor you're not going to hear from for 6 months, and you're going to be like, what's going on with that property, right? And work with ones that are so they're transparent and open, I think, and willing to teach you along the way. I think that means a lot. I mean, I've had sponsors who have driven me out to properties. We spend whole days together kind of going through these things, and invited me up to the offices, meet with their management team. And you know, it's as close as you can get to the real thing without doing it by yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great learning experience.
Ken, what questions do you ask to figure out what kind of experience or how much access you will have to the deals and kind of the inner workings of the deals? Because, I mean, you talked about that annoying limited partner who's
Right.
asking questions. And I know a lot of sponsors or operators hear that and say, I definitely wouldn't let this dude invest with me. So,
Right.
what questions do you ask? And kind of what questions did the sponsors ask of you to make sure there was a fit? And I guess for those listening, there's the questions, but then there's obviously a line, right? There's a line where an operator is probably like, look, dude, like, way too much. Like I can't
Yeah.
deliver what you really want. So how do you figure
Yeah.
that out?
Well, I think, like with anything, you have to be respectful, and I think you have to start with doing some of your own homework. So I don't think you can come in with no baseline education and just be like, teach me everything, right? I think you have to do the homework. You got to read the books, listen to the podcasts to get the baseline to at least know what you're talking about enough, right? And then it's more about the specifics. So a lot of the questions that I would ask is around those specifics around, okay, you decided to go, for example, with HUD financing versus Fannie Mae. Why? You know, why did you do that? What are the limitations? What is this going to allow us to do or prevent us from doing versus Fannie Mae or another agency, for example, right? So I think around financing is a great one because, a lot of people just talk about, oh yeah, you go out and you get a Fannie or a Freddie loan.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, there's so many more
Multiple.
options, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many more options that sophisticated folks are using, especially like in the environment today where, Fannie's announced that they've raised their spreads because they're almost tapped out. So folks are doing creative things like bridge loans, but not bridge loans for a dilapidated property that really needs a heavy rehab, but just
Mm-hmm.
a low interest rate bridge loan just to get through until the agencies can kind of loosen the purse strings again. So I think it's just so financing, I think, is a great one to ask questions around. I also think one of my big one of my big blind spots I knew was just the whole construction and renovation side. So I really tried to focus there because I had never done. I mean, I worked at Home Depot in high school, and that was about as close as I got to ever doing any construction work. You know, I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
lugging sheets of drywall around for people, but so focusing on that and focusing on, okay, what does it take to do a turn, right? And what's kind of a soft turn versus medium versus hard, right? And
yep,
what goes into that, and what are the things that really drive value out of doing those turns, right?
yep.
And just learning that stuff, and learning that, you know, a coat of paint and new flooring, I mean, that goes a longer way than anything else, right? I mean, that can make an apartment look totally new.
Absolutely.
And so, but what type of flooring, right? What
Hmm.
type of flooring? What type of countertops? You know, when does it make sense to put granite in versus a nicer linoleum, right? And so, just
Yep.
understanding those nuances. Um, Another big one that I think people don't spend enough time on is operating expenses, and what should operating expenses be. Like, I hear there's a lot of rules of thumb, but I think it's so market specific. I think especially when you think about taxes and
Hmm.
insurance,
Hmm.
you really need to understand the nuances of the market, and I think those sponsors can really help you do that, and the property managers can really help you do that. So getting down to knowing, like, you don't just need to know it at a percentage of income level, but you need to know per unit, what does it take to run per year? You know, is it
Yep.
3,500? Is it 5,000? And it's gonna differ a lot. So that's another area I would ask a lot of questions around and understand why
Great
and how they
points.
do that.
Yeah, great points. I mean, a lot of great stuff to understand. And some of those things you can find out, as you're evaluating the deal, just to understand, hey, what assumptions did you make here? Why did you make these
Hmm.
assumptions? How did you get
Hmm.
there? And that's a great way to learn. And again, most operators will have no problem answering questions about their underwriting
Hmm.
model, especially if you're seriously considering investing in the deal. If you're only doing it to ask questions to educate yourself, at some point that may become a bit annoying. So you kind
Yeah.
of need to balance that. But obviously, if you're
Yeah.
going to seriously look at it, being a limited partner is a phenomenal way to get real action, get your knowledge together, gain the experience. And then I say talk about credibility, because it's going to be much easier for you to talk to another investor if you've invested yourself, because you don't have to come at it like a sales pitch. You can
That's right.
simply share your experience. Hey, you know what? I had a lot of the same kind of questions when I was looking to get started, but I've invested in this. Here's what my experience has been. I'm now looking to bring other people I know, like, and trust into similar kind of deals. That's going to
Yeah.
go a long way into conversations with potential investors versus simply coming at them saying, hey, I don't have any actual experience, but I've read some books. So I
That's
think
right.
that, or listen to this great podcast, but
Yeah.
I think, trying to get some actual experience, that's going to take you pretty far. And being a limited partner is a great way to get involved in the first deal and start to gain that experience. Hey, Ken, I want to
Absolutely.
transition, man. I know you're based in Indianapolis, a great market in
Yes,
the
sir.
Midwest. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the market of Indianapolis. I know it's a market that you focus in. What do you like about the Indianapolis market, and what are you seeing today?
Sure, I'd love to talk about Indy. It's one of my favorite topics. I grew up in Indianapolis, lived here all through high school, went to college, moved away, spent a fair amount of time in Chicago, but have a family and three little kids now, and decided it was time to get back closer to family. Also, was in Chicago, you know, building my real estate career and looking around and saying, you know, I don't think this is the place I really want to invest. And happened to be that Indy's a great market, especially for multifamily. There's a lot of opportunity there, and so that also helped us make that decision to
Yeah.
move back. And so being local here, I've been local back again for about 2 years, and honestly, the growth in the city that happened while I was gone has been pretty incredible. And the things I like about Indy overall, you know, it's stable. It doesn't have those fluctuations like you will, you know, on coastal markets or in more cyclical markets. So it's kind of steady eddy from a investment and return standpoint. It's affordable, so cost of living is affordable. It's growing, and it's probably growing. It's probably bigger than you think, and it's growing more than you think. Is what I find when I talk to people about Indianapolis. So Indianapolis it's the second largest city in the Midwest and outside of Chicago, and it's the 14th largest city in the U.S. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that. And So when I look at any market, in Indianapolis just being the one I live, I really look at 6 points, and I'd say, the size of the market. So, I like to invest in major markets. I just think it allows for a greater margin of error. I like to look at growth, both population and job growth. I like to look at, is it business friendly? So from a tax standpoint, from a kind of landlord and tenant law standpoint, I like to look at the job mix. So, what types of jobs are there? I like to look at the supply. So I think it's really important to understand, rents may be going up great now, but if there's a ton of supply coming in, it's going to saturate the market. That's going to affect how your rents are going to grow over time. And then I like to look at the overall just general livability of the city. What amenities does the city have that are going to attract people there? So, I'll cover a couple of those things for Indy, right? So population growth wise, Indy's grown 24% since 2000. But I think it's really important to understand the submarkets, where if you look at Hamilton County, for example, which is the north side of Indianapolis. So you're in like the city of Carmel, for example, that's expected to double in size by 2050. So significant growth going on up north in Indianapolis. If you look at Hendricks County out to the west, it's expected to grow by 84% by 2050. So significant areas and pockets of growth happening. And then other parts of the city really are stagnant. So you've got to be really sub-market specific. And I think that's what being local and kind of having that insight is really helpful for. They say in the next 40 years, Indy is going to account for 70% of the entire population growth in the state. So the city really is growing. And it's affordable. It's got a 93.2 cost of living index, which means it's kind of cheaper than the average, right? And the average median household income is about $66,000. So it's great for those B and C type of properties, which is what I focus on. Yep. There's a lot of stock, and there's a lot of people in Indy that are renting by necessity versus by choice. And so being able to provide them safe, affordable housing, it's a great mission and a great cause, as well as a great investment, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. So when you think about, is it business friendly? So Indy is voted 8th best from a business tax structure standpoint. So, favorable from a tax standpoint. We've got a low income tax, about 3%. And the tenant landlord laws are favorable to the landlord, eviction laws and things. It's an area, it's a state where, they'll let you run the business as you need to run it, and do the things that you need to do to make your business profitable. From a job standpoint, unemployment's 3.3%. Job growth has been about 1% to 2% a year. But I think there's a couple of caveats that if you get into the detail that are interesting, where tech job growth has grown 2% a year. And they're saying that in the past year, the amount of job postings related to emerging technology have increased 85% for jobs in Indianapolis. And that's being driven by companies like Salesforce, which placed a headquarters here, and Infosys, which also placed a headquarters here. And those companies are driving a lot of other smaller tech companies to Indianapolis. I think now that people are able to work in a more remote capacity, and it's more the norm, people are looking for places like Indy with a low cost of living, where they can still make a great salary, as a tech employee, but they don't have to live in the Bay Area where it's all going to be eaten up by rent, really. And so I think there's some nice movement there for Indianapolis. I think on a larger scale, what we're seeing wages grow. Hourly wages especially have grown 6% in 2018. So that's great. Again, if you're thinking about people in the C and B apartment communities and the affordability of those. There's 3 Fortune 500 companies in Indy: Anthem, the insurance company; Eli Lilly, which is the massive life sciences and pharmaceutical company; and then Simon Properties, which own a majority of the malls across the U.S. And the largest industries are fairly stable industries. Lots of healthcare. The largest employers in the city are all hospital systems. The government, so the state, city, and county seats are all in Indianapolis. So lots of government jobs. lots of education. So if you look at the top jobs, it's essentially healthcare and education because there's 5 universities in Indianapolis.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of great information there. So let's try to unpack just a little bit of it.
Sure.
You started talking about a couple things about the city of Indianapolis that stand out. One, it's the 14th largest city, which I don't think a lot of people know that. When you think about all the major metros, and we talk a lot about the Southeast and all the, the investments happening in different cities. Well, Indianapolis is the 14th largest city. So you do have a pretty big base there of residents, second largest city in the Midwest after Chicago. And Chicago right now is losing population. And when you start to look at where those people are going, you have some folks who are going south to Texas, to Houston in particular. You have folks who are going to Indianapolis, which is just a few hours away. You have folks going to other places, but you start looking at the net migration and the migration patterns, and you see that, Indianapolis is getting people from the Chicago area, as well as getting other folks from the other parts of Indianapolis or India as well, Indiana, the state as well. And it's really well positioned geographically in the U.S., where you can get to kind of the Northeast, North, you can get West. So you can get to a lot of the different places in the city, or I guess around the country from Indianapolis.
Yeah, the stat is you can get to 75% of the U.S. in one day from Indianapolis. And that's why logistics is so huge here. So if you talk about areas of the city, the south side near the airport is growing like gangbusters because of all the logistics. It's got second largest FedEx hub is in Indianapolis, and there's 5 major interstates that intersect in Indy. So logistics is huge for the city.
So, I mean, there's a lot of growth there, right? And I think that a lot of future potential, a lot of growth today, but also as we look down the road, a lot of potential growth. And the thing you and I both like about India is it's a market where there's still strong cash flow, really good yield plays today with upside potential. A lot of the Midwest markets give you one or the other, typically more yield plays or cash flow, but maybe not as much of the growth story. And Indianapolis does have a really good growth story. So that's one thing we both like about that market. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things you're doing now, right? So you've got your company, Hudson Investing, where you're now partnering with other investors to acquire apartment buildings. I know from a marketing standpoint, you're doing a really great job of attracting investors. You've got some strategies that you're employing. Would you be willing to share a little bit of some of the strategies that you're employing to grow your investor database?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a major focus of mine in the past 6 months. And, I think it starts with this concept of, fish where the fish are, right? Like, go where your investors are. And to be able to do that, you have to understand who your investors are. And I think that really starts with understanding your target audience, and even going as far as it's kind of a normal marketing activity, but it can be applied here, which is creating a buyer persona, or in this case, an investor persona. And what that is really not just saying that, okay, you want to attract people that are 30 to 65 and male, for example, but getting really into the detail of who are these people and what do these people want, right? And what are they looking for? What interests them? And so I've built out 4 investor personas. One is the kind of the wealthy, seasoned investor, right? The accredited investor. 2 are the people that want to learn about real estate. So this was me, right? This was me. I want to learn how to do this. I'm going to invest in some of these deals to learn the ropes. 3 are busy professionals. These are doctors, lawyers, folks, they're running practices, and they have cash. They want to invest and diversify, but they like their day job and they want to continue to do that. They just need a place to get good returns. And 4 are retired folks. And this one I carved out because of really the focus on retirement accounts and just kind of the education that needs to happen for those investors, educating people on self-directed IRAs, for example, and ways that they're able to use some of their retirement funds to find better returns. So there's those 4 areas. So I'll give you a couple examples. One with the kind of the wealthier accredited investor, go and fish where the fish are, right? So some things that I do, I've joined a local country club. There's one right by my house, right? So you want to, again, fish where the fish are. Go to local political events, local charity events. I think those are all places where folks that usually have a certain means are coming together, and are and just gives you a chance to meet those people and talk to those people and build those relationships, because people invest with people that they know, like, and trust, right? It has to start there. If you can't start with trying to pitch a deal and take a hard sell, right? You got to start with building that relationship, and they've got to trust you and know you first. So if you want to get people into a deal, you need to start months in advance of talking with them, educating them about what you're doing, and just getting them to know, like, and trust you, right? I'll give you one other example of a different demographic. So the people that want to get into the game, the people that want to learn more, right? So where do they go, right? Well, those are your local meetups. So start a local meetup, right? Be the guy that's attracting them. Other great ones are your RIA meetings. So Indianapolis has several different RIA groups that meet on a regular basis. And in those, you'll have a lot of different people that are taking a lot of different strategies, right? But you have a lot of single family home folks, you have a lot of wholesalers, but there are people there that are looking to either want to know how to invest in commercial multifamily and they just don't, or that are going there looking to invest with someone. I mean, I've had that experience too, of people that are, hey, thought this would be a good place to find people that know about real estate because I want to invest in some real estate. So the whole idea is about just understanding who your investors are, the different types of investors you're trying to target, and then figuring out how you can get in front of them, and go where they are, fish where the fish are.
I love it, man. Great tips there, and very actionable information. I love your point on personas. That's something we preach as well. We're big on understanding who your consumer is. And then once you understand who he is, really getting into that mindset, thinking about this person, where do they go? What kind of things do they do? You talk about going where they're at. Well, I was going to build out a gym in my basement. We ended up signing up for the gym around the corner because it's kind of a club. It's a members club in the area.
There you go. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I looked at it, I'm like, oh man, I just want to build it out in my home. It'd be much easier to go in the basement. But to your point, you have to intentionally put yourself in a position to network with people and do so in an organic way. Like, I don't go to the club and start trying to talk finances with people in the locker room, but you'll start to naturally connect with people, and they ask you, well, what do you do? And you start to explain, and you see where it goes from there, right? And you just kind of make sure you constantly are putting yourself around people that are potential investors. And I think if you do that intentionally, you open up the doors. You certainly don't want to walk in with your business card out and just passing it around to everyone. That's but exactly still being an organic person, letting things come up in natural conversations. But you gave some great tips as well about going to political events and also joining country clubs and things like that. So really great actionable tips.
And like, the political thing, we were kind of talking about this earlier. Like, I mean, it doesn't, like, my political opinions don't really play into it when I'm attending. It's more just, again, being in the environment with folks that could be interested in investing in your deals and starting to build those relationships and building out those networks. Because it's crazy how fast the networks expand, right? This person talks to this person, they talk to that person, and all of a sudden, your network is expanding all over the city. And it's really incredible if you do it in a very kind of mindful, purposeful way, how quickly your network can grow. And so, I mean, I think it's exactly right. The thing that you said about don't start with your business card, right? Like, where I've had the most success is just being myself and being genuine and taking it from an approach, telling people my story of how I started investing passively, how that's led me down my journey. And making it very much about my journey rather than saying, hi, I'm Kent Ritter. I represent Hudson Investing, and here's my business card, and we do, all this. Like, people don't want to invest in some like blind corporation. They want to invest in you because they, again, know, like, and trust you.
Absolutely. We do business with people we like. So there you go. All right. So we're going to jump right into our bullseye round. Kent, you ready to go?
Ready to go.
What is the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year?
Pitch Anything. It's actually right up here.
Yeah, Pitch Anything. I've done that one on audiobook, so it's a good book.
Yeah, Warren Claff.
Yep.
If you're going to be getting in front of people and you're going to be pitching anything, it's a great place to start. He breaks it down very tactically about how to approach your presentation, even down to the minute and how much time you should be focusing on each aspect and levels of detail to go to. So I've given that to probably given that to 12 to 15 people in the past couple months, just because I think it's so valuable.
It is. It really gets into kind of the caveman mentality as far as how our brain works, and basically either running from fear or in protecting yourself, or actually thinking this is something to help you. So it's a great book. I mean, it's definitely worth a read and digging into a little bit more.
And it's so counterintuitive to what you would think, right? It's like everything is like, read. What, really? Yeah. All right, give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business. Oh, that's a good one. I use Contactually, which is basically it's a CRM. But the reason I like it is because it integrates, kind of scrapes your emails, it scrapes your phone. So it integrates everything into one place, and it tracks all of your interactions. I found in other CRMs, I'm having to go in and log, okay, I talked to this person and did that. This automatically brings those things in, so you can see the history of what you've done. So it's been pretty beneficial. And, it also has the ability to go out and do, mass emails, but do them in a very customized way, right? Pull in those smart fields. So yeah, it's been a very good tool.
Awesome. What is a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Meditation. So my goal, I try to meditate every day. Wake up in the morning, 10, 15 minutes, mindfulness, meditation. I use the app Headspace, which helps track it. And, it gives you different goals, different things to do. But I mean, that's what keeps me centered. So outside of having my own business, I've got 3 small children. I've got three under 4. So just having that quiet time, kind of open up your mind and get everything. I look at it as like putting everything in the file cabinet and getting everything in the right place. That's what centers me every day to get started. And then I'll go from there to just journaling. And by journaling, I'm really writing down, what are my priorities for the day? And just getting that focus, because it's so easy to get caught up in emails and all these things that aren't going to drive your business forward. But there's probably 3, maybe 1 thing each day that you can do to really drive your business forward. And I think if you don't have the focus on that, then you're just going to be spinning your wheels.
Love it. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Oh man, I wish, one, just what syndication is and being able to get in that process much more quickly, right? And I said, like, God, I feel like I didn't waste my 20s. I had a lot of fun in my 20s living in Chicago, but just the focus now and the education that I have, being able to take that back, I said, wow, if I had started 10 years ago, where would I be? But I think just the real estate knowledge is one thing, and the other is just the mindset and focus and all the things that we kind of just talked about. But building your mindset on a daily basis, I think is important. You have to fight against all the negativity that's out there. And if you're not bringing positivity into your life, and if you're not focusing on it daily, you're not going to win that battle.
What are you curious about right now?
What am I curious about? That's really good. I'm really curious about more of the macroeconomic aspects of what's happening in the world. We hear all kinds of things, right? Interest rates, inverted yield curves, tariffs, all these things we're hearing, all this turmoil, potential wars. I had an econ minor in college, and understanding how all of that affects on a very micro level what I'm doing in multifamily real estate, right? But because all of these different levers out there are pulling things in different directions. So what I'm curious about, what I've really been studying is how all those things play in and what's noise and what really matters, and boiling that down to know how do I need to adjust my strategy.
All right, Kent, most important question of all, and I need this for next week. Give me the best place to grab a bite in Indianapolis.
Oh man, if you're in Indy, you have to go to St. Elmo's Steakhouse. It's incredible. Hey, I'll meet you there, by the way. Hey, I'll get there as much as I can, but it's a locally owned steakhouse. There's only one of them, and they're known for fantastic steak. I mean, they've been there since, 1900, something like that. But also their shrimp cocktail. That's dangerous because it's basically a horseradish cocktail. So, you go there and that's what they're known for, but I mean, it'll melt your face. So just be careful when you take that first bite, because it's serious stuff, but it's good if you like spice.
There you go. Kent, what a wonderful interview this was. It was so good talking to you. I love your story and how you started out, the way you transitioned, getting in as a limited partner, transitioning to kind of the lead role on deals, and really, how you're actively going out and building your investor network. Great actionable tips for all of our listeners. So thank you for sharing that right now. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
So the easiest way is just Kent, Kent, at HudsonInvesting.com. You can email me. We have a website coming soon. That'll be www.HudsonInvesting.com. We're going through the last editing to get that up and running, but just email me. I'm very accessible.
Excellent. Kent, thank you again for coming on the show, man. We'll be in touch for sure. But I appreciate talking to you, and thanks again for coming on Target Market Insights.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure, John. Really appreciate it.